Awesome. So I see we're 1 minute after the bottom of the hour. So let's go ahead and dive on in. So hey, everyone. My name is Michael Avtonomoff, and I'm a solutions consultant here at Blueshift. I want to thank you all so much for joining me today in our demo series. As the title suggests, today we're going to be discussing how to easily build machine learning-based recommendations, embed those recommendations inside any messaging channel, website, or mobile app, and then of course measure how performant each of our recommendations was in our analytics tool that we call Insights. And most importantly, I'm going to show you how to accomplish all of this without the overhead that's traditionally associated with leveraging recommendations. So this is, of course, more important than ever in today's environment, given how user behavior has rapidly changed over the past year to become increasingly reliant upon these digital channels for making purchases. So customers today are inundated with messaging and information from dozens of brands. So we're going to be exploring how to effectively make recommendations that resonate with your customers and ultimately result in more sales. So today's agenda is very straightforward. We're going to spend about 5 minutes discussing who Blueshift is and why we're going to help you make these simple recommendations. From there, we're going to go ahead and spend most of today's inside the actual platform, looking at how easy it is to build these recommendations, embed them wherever we'd like, and then of course, reviewing the effectiveness of each recommendation in driving key performance outcomes. I'm also going to share with all of you some key insights gleaned from an empirical study that we conducted on billions of messages sent via Blueshift, which will of course tie in the importance of recommendations and the uplift that some of our customers have seen. And then finally, we'll wrap up with a brief Q&A. So please be sure to ask any questions as they come to mind, and I'll either answer during the demo or once we reach our Q&A session. Should we run out of time, I will follow up with each of you on any questions that you post. So now I'd like to give a little background on everyone regarding who Blueshift is. As a sales engineer by trade, I promise you I have a strong aversion to lengthy PowerPoints. So I promise I'm going to keep this super brief and we can spend most of our time today inside the actual platform. So Blueshift provides a robust Smart Hub CDP that helps brands intelligently scale customer engagement on every single channel. And all this is of course powered by our built-in AI and machine learning tech. So as you can see here, we work with a number of different brands across a variety of industries. We're also backed by some of the world's leading investors. We've been recognized by a number of major research and advisory firms, such as Gartner and Forrester. And then of course, our platform has been voted on and validated by many of our customers as a leader in the CDP and marketing automation space on G2 Crowd. And then finally, we also ensure that the security of our clients' data so that you're confident in knowing that we're always ahead of the curve in terms of meeting compliance and local regulations, such as with GDPR and CCPA. In terms of flexibility, Blueshift partners with all of your favorite data platforms, tag management systems, and other third-party vendors so that marketers like yourselves can seamlessly connect and integrate with all of your existing systems. So now that we've talked a little bit about who we are, let's dive into functionally how Blueshift works. So Blueshift takes your first-party data and third-party customer data about both known and anonymous users from your various data sources, and then we create individual customer profiles and we enhance them with important information. Blueshift uses AI to make predictions about your customers, including predicting likelihood to purchase, what products to recommend, when to send those messages, and of course, where to engage with your users. And so by combining your customer data with Blueshift's AI and multi-channel journeys, we make it really easy to deliver one-to-one personalization everywhere. And then beyond that, Blueshift seamlessly captures all customer interactions from those personalized messages and uses it to continuously and automatically improve predictions so that the customer experience is going to always be relevant and updated. Awesome. So now that you're familiar with what Blueshift does at a high level, let's go ahead and start with a product demo, and we can explore specifically how simple it is for us to leverage recommendations and what sort of impact they're having on our bottom line. So first things first, as much as I would love to dive right into the recommendation, it all starts with a little bit of context in terms of how we make that recommendation. So a key differentiator for Blueshift is the fact that we're going to be able to not only model the entirety of your users, so their state, their behavior, what they're doing, what their preferences are, but we also have a way of distinctly modeling a product catalog. And so what we're looking at here is just an example of one of those items in a catalog. And so intuitively enough, of course, a catalog item can be a physical good, it can be a digital good like a subscription, or it can be something like a blog post. All that's entailed by using catalogs is we have something that we want to recommend to customers. Key thing to note here is we see a ton of user attribute or item attribute fields right here. It's really important that we fill out as much as possible here so that then the machine learning on Blueshift side can make a lot of powerful inferences. So for example, let's say someone's price sensitive. So long as you're including the price, Blueshift will be able to observe such behavior and then of course recommend items that are either on discount or more affordable. We also make it easy to embed all the information that you see here. And then we're also going to leverage machine learning in the context of categorization. So of course, for most robust product catalogs, especially in the e-commerce space, we have a lot of categories describing the nested relationship of these items. And as we'll see, once we dive into recommendations, this is going to be really powerful in terms of making those intelligent recommendations to our customers. And then of course, if you want to include any custom attributes, that's really simple to do. And we'll be able to model that right here. Last thing I want to highlight is, of course, this is all a one-time setup. We're going to want to programmatically connect with your catalog such that any changes to price or availability or when an item is available, we're going to be cognizant of that and make sure we're not recommending, a Christmas sweater when the season has ended. So up next, we can actually get into the best part of the demo, which is where we're actually building out recommendations. So here I am now in that recommendation section. And what I want to draw your attention to first here is over on this left-hand side. We're going to see a lot of different categories, and we'll run through each one of those and discuss what types of recommendations are supported. So first off, we're taking a look at the events. This is a type of recommendations that intuitively enough allows us to look at what events has a user committed or done historically. And then based upon those events, let's recommend items. So really intuitive, let's say we have an abandoned cart scenario. A user has viewed an item in the last 7 days, but then of course we don't want to recommend items that that user has purchased. So I'm going to exclude that. And so these events here are completely customizable. Any sort of events you may have, so long as you can track them as an event, then we can use that as the basis for saying, well, Michael has viewed this item, but he has not purchased it. Let's recommend it. And then it's as simple as hitting this add block button. And the end result is going to be the items you see over here on the right-hand side. I see my good friend, John Smith, who I'm previewing this recommendation for, has not viewed any items that he didn't not purchase. So moving on to the next section, we have what's called related items. And this is our first instance of actually leveraging machine learning to make inferences as to what items we should show to a user. So specifically, we're leveraging collaborative filtering here, and we're looking at items that someone has either viewed or purchased, and then looking at related items because we know about that categorization, so we know about the associations between all of these items in a catalog. And so here, what I'm taking a look at is I'm showing items similar to what Michael has or John Smith has purchased in the last 7 days, and then I want to rank these items by what I think the next best products are on similars with user with similar view to purchase event activity. So if I hit this add block button, we're going to see all of this generated on the right-hand side. I see John Smith has yet again not really had a lot of purchased items. So as a workaround to this, one thing that we offer is what's called backfill. So let's say that I know in any given email, I want to recommend 4 items to a customer, but I want to make sure that they always get at least 4 items. What I can do right here is select backfill and then choose some sort of basis for filling in items should that user not have 4 qualifying items in this recommendation. So let's see the net result right here. So we can see I backfilled that with top viewed products, even though John did not have any sort of items that we came up to with related items. Next step here, another very common and powerful recommendation scheme that we can use is predictive content. So as I alluded to earlier, because we're constantly monitoring the different catalog items that a user is viewing, what they're purchasing, what they're adding to cart, but ultimately not buying, we can make really strong inferences on what categories of items they're interested in. So all I'm going to do is choose how I want to select these items. I've chosen top affinity categories. And then the second and final step is choosing how I want to rank these items. Of course, a very popular option here is top converting. That's ultimately what we're trying to drive towards. I can also place caps in terms of the number of items per category so that I'm not just inundating you only with shoes or only with a certain type of product. From this dropdown, you can also see we have a bit of options here. So out of the box, we provide many of these different ranking schemes, but you can also work with our team. Let's say you want to build out a recommendation that ranks them by the most discounted products. We can also include that as well. And so finally, we've made our selection in terms of how we're picking items and how we're ranking those items. The final step is going to be hitting this add block item. Yet again, John, not feeling too keen on these recommended items. Last step here is over on the left-hand side, selecting by item attributes. So let's say I only want to show a certain brand or items by a certain author or producer. I can easily select that from this dropdown and then add those items to the right-hand side. So really simple as a non-technical user for me to choose some sort of outcome that I want to drive towards, and then rest assured, I'll be able to rely upon Blueshift to make those inferences and make sure that each one of these recommendations is tailored to every single user. And that calculation is going to be done at time of message send. So even if I'm building these days in advance, I know, or I can rest assured knowing that it's going to be personalized up to the minute right before we send that message. So now that we've built our recommendation, let's go ahead and jump into a creative builder and take a look at how easy it is to embed these. So I'm not a masterful copywriter, as you might note here, but I gave it the old college try. What I want to draw your attention to specifically, though, is where we're embedding all of this information. So over here, I have the title of all of my different items. On the right-hand side, I have the MSRP. And then, of course, if the first thing you're probably thinking here is, don't tell me I have to learn a templating language, and of course not. So everything we've done in Blueshift is just designed to take something that's really complex and productize it and abstract it for a non-technical user so that it's easy to use. And so all I need to do here, let's say I want to insert the title of one of the recommendations for John. I'm just going to hit this merge tag button. I'm going to find the title, and then I'm just going to click on that. So as a non-technical user, I don't have to learn a templating language or anything. Last thing I want to highlight is we've seen the actual template for this email. We've seen how I'm embedding the title of the item, the image, the MSRP. Now let's go ahead and take a look at how this previews. So if you'll excuse me while I collapse that. Now we're just going to hit this preview button and we can see how this loads up for John Smith. And so over here, we have the final result. We can see I've embedded an image. I've embedded that name of the product. And then of course the MSRP is also listed there. So this is really nice in that from a QA perspective, I can go ahead and preview for any personality. Another thing I want to highlight is from a QA perspective, perhaps you have many different personas or segments that you want to be able to QA for. We make that really simple to do. So just by hitting this button up in the top right-hand corner, I'm going to come down here to recommendations, and then we can either select the user explicitly for who we want to see this preview, or if I want to randomly choose a user from one of my personas or segments, we can easily do that from this dropdown right here. So the QA process couldn't be simpler. We've embedded the title, MSRP, and everything, and that I was able to do that as a non-technical user. So it's incredibly robust. So now that we've built out the recommendation scheme, we've seen how easy it is to embed on one of our messaging channels. Now let's go ahead and prove out how effectively can we actually measure the performance here. So up next, I'm going to hop into our insights section. And what we're specifically looking at is report. So a report is centered around a very specific metric or outcome. And then it's going to give us, allow us to glean those insights on how something actually performed. So whether that be a campaign, a recommendation scheme that we used, or anything, any metric that you see from this dropdown, we're going to make that really simple to measure. So first things first, what I'm going to do here is choose the metric that I want to measure. So out of the box, we offer a lot of fundamental or what we call core metrics. So these might be things like, what are the total number of orders driven by a campaign? Or how many sends did I actually send out in that email-centric campaign? You can, of course, choose any of those. But what we're doing today is we're taking a look at compound metrics, right? So this is a function of two different metrics. And then what I specifically wanted to look at was how do these recommendations affect revenue per order? Which is to say, do these recommendations result in an uplift when I embed them in my messaging channels? So having chose revenue from per order, I'm then going to choose my time frame. Really flexible here. Another thing that's important to highlight is we can modify this to be a moving time window, so it's not at all static. I'm just going to choose last 30 days. And then finally, we're going to choose how we want to group all of this information. So of course, because I want to compare these recommendations, I'm going to say group it by these 3 distinct recommendations that I built out, because I want to see the AOV or the average order value for each of those recommendations. However, also want to point out, this is where I can also compare by campaign author, campaign type. If I want to see if a specific channel is more performant than others, we also support that as well. Last thing to do here is choose any sort of limits or sorting that we want to do. And then finally attach any sort of filtering. So let's say I only want to see how this recommendation is performing in a certain context or among a certain subset of people. We can add that filter right here. And then moving on, we can take a look at our 3 different recommendations. So here I have a machine learning based recommendation. We're taking a look at a user's top category affinity and letting Blueshift run its machine learning to figure out, based upon that affinity, what do we want to show them. Whereas for these other 2 recommendation schemes, I'm just doing something a little bit more fundamental or essential, in that I'm looking at their event stream and then saying, well, if Michael's added something to cart and then he didn't finally purchase it, let's make a recommendation for those items, or let's just show him the most recent products that he's browsed. And so the takeaway here, as we can see in this column over on the right-hand side, is that using these machine learning based recommendations were really robust. It's driven a huge multiple in terms of driving revenue or increasing revenue per order relative to these other recommendation schemes. And of course, this can be embedded inside of an A/B test, so we can be very confident at the findings. Awesome, so that covers everything that I wanted to show on the demo. So now I'm gonna go ahead and return to the PowerPoint, and we can wrap things up with just a little bit on our key benefits and some of that empirical study that I shared with you earlier. So to that end, Blueshift has conducted a study of over 14.9 billion messages sent out by our customers. And here are some of those findings from that report. So email triggers in response to a user's behavior are 497% more effective than batch and blast campaigns, with a 468% higher click-through rate and a 525% higher conversion rate. Push notifications that are triggered are 1,490% more effective than batch and blast campaigns, 279% higher click-through rate, and a 2,700% higher conversion rate. Most relevant to our discussion today, predictive recommendations are 116% more effective than non-predictive recommendations. So when we're using those easy to use machine learning options in our recommendation scheme, that's the kind of uplift we're going to see relative to user has added to cart, but they didn't ultimately make a purchase. And the key benefit there is that we've made it really simple for non-technical audiences to use. It's not going to require input from a data science team. It's not going to require having to configure all that data. We've made it accessible so long as you feed us in that event data and share with us your catalog. And then the final finding, and one that validates a lot of the general discussion that we've previously had on marketing automation, multi-channel campaigns are 283% more effective than single channel campaigns, which is to say multi-channel campaigns had a 234% higher click-through rate and a 331% higher conversion rate. These are staggering figures, of course, but one that we've proven out across all of our customers and really emphasizes some of the key things that we do. And then at the end of this webinar, I'm going to provide all of you with a link to where you can download this trigger-based marketing report from our website. Awesome. So I see we're finishing a bit early. I hope this was useful, though. I really appreciate everyone taking the time today. If you're at all interested in receiving a custom demo, please feel free to reach out. You have our information, and thank you so much for your time today. Bye now.